So Nikki is the coordinator for partnerships and development at the Wikimedia Germany Foundation. It's the foundation that works with Wikipedia and other projects, and she will talk about it. So in the German chapter of the Wikimedia movement since 2014. She is a political scientist by education, and I love this, non-profit unicorn by choice. She has worked in the non-profit sector in the US, Europe, Africa, and Germany for 30 years, helping non-profits with resources, partnerships, and resilient organizations. And Wikimedia is the first global commons she's tackling. So good luck with that. Thank you for being here. And this, I think the battery.
If it doesn't work, I can it's working.
Right now. Is it working? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll try not to break it. So I want to talk. So now we're switching completely. We're switching arenas. We're going to the digital and the global. Hope you guys can make that transition with me. Is it working? No.
Just now.
Okay. Find a battery. Okay. So I'll try to project. You could also just come a little closer.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. This is much cozier, and I'll still try to project, and hopefully that will find a battery for this thing. So I want to talk today about the coming of age of the digital commons. And I work for Wikimedia Germany, and I want to talk today about sort of what happened over the last 18 years with Wikipedia and the emergent movement from that. And so next year, as some of you might know, okay, next year Wikipedia will turn 18 years old. So we're sort of an older teenager at this point, which is why I call this the coming of age. So since 2001, this free encyclopedia has grown to over 300 language versions and over 45 million articles. Yeah, it wouldn't have lasted very long. Wikipedia today is the fifth most visited website globally, and what you see here in the back is our vision. It has been our vision since it was started. So imagine a world in which every single human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. So much has been researched and written about the communities that are at the heart of this largest of the digital knowledge commons. And I think some of the researchers are in this room or part of this meeting that we're having over the next few days. And I heard an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, who recently has been compelled to give a lot of interviews, where he said something that really pissed me off, excuse my language. He said that we're now entering the new territory of community governance with Facebook. And I was like, no, Mark, you're not. Because our communities have played with community governance, developed it, tested, frustrated each other, and succeeded at it to a certain extent for almost 18 years now. So no, you're not entering new territory. So Wikipedia has reached a certain maturity, as one could expect from an older teenager. and we're still driven by the same vision. But meanwhile, all this other stuff is happening. So meanwhile, Wikipedia has become part of a larger, rather complex sort of organic development that we fondly now call the Wikimedia movement. You can see a picture of a good chunk of that movement actually in Italy, in Sinolario 2 years ago for the Wikimedia conference. So this movement comprises of the volunteer communities that work on Wikipedia and on the other projects, and on the other hand, of the organizations that support these communities. So when I speak of Wikipedia, of Wikimedia projects, I mean each Wikipedia counts as one project. So each language version is one project. And then there are the other projects. Each one has like a little symbol, and I can't like tell you what all of them are based on these symbols. But some of the more important ones are, for example, Wiktionary, Wikisource, Wikivoyage, and then Wikimedia Commons, which some of you might be familiar with, which is the repository of images that are published under open license. And then the newest one, Wikidata, which now actually has a huge volunteer community, and that's the open source semantic data backbone of Wikipedia and many other Wikimedia projects, and an increasing number of users outside of the Wikimedia movement. So each of these projects has a community, and this community is volunteer editors, readers, administrators, and stewards. So that's sort of like the community governance stuff we've been making up for the last 18 years. And unlike Mr. Zuckerberg, we see them as people. We don't see them as users. And without those people, none of the visible products of free knowledge would exist. So when we talk about social movements in this conference or this symposium that we're looking at for the next few days, we have to understand that the nature of our communities is a little bit different than from what we know traditionally as social movements. Because their members act firstly as individuals, and they engage primarily online. So that picture you see here, yeah, that's some people engaging as people, but that is something that we do as an add-on almost. So the rules of engagement that shape the governance of the digital commons have developed more or less organically over the years as a way to mediate conflict and to enforce the values of the project, and offline interaction is secondary, but increasingly viewed as a means to create the human connections and to build social capital on top of a community of otherwise isolated actors. So that's the communities and the projects, and I said the second part of this movement thing is the organizations. So many communities have since 2003 or 2001 organized somewhat more formally, and they've started user groups, and others have incorporated organizational entities. They have founded chapters and thematic organizations. So now we're looking at all these what we call affiliates worldwide. And you can see on this map, the blue ones are the chapters. So those are countries that have chapters, and the green ones are countries that have user groups. So the user groups are the less formally organized ones. And then we also have something called thematic organizations. Does anybody know a thematic organization of the Wikimedia movement? We call them some thematic organizations, but there's really only one. Does anybody know where this is? It's actually here in Barcelona. It's called Amical, and it's the organization here in Catalonia that promotes the Catalan Wikipedia and open knowledge projects. So we have, the Wikimedia movement has one thematic organization. That's right here. I thought it was kind of cool. So the first organization that formed was the Wikimedia Foundation, and that's a charitable nonprofit incorporated in the US. And it holds the trademark, it collects shareholder donations, it develops the platforms, it develops most of the software. and it maintains the servers. And then my chapter, Wikimedia Germany, that's where I work, is the second largest organization, and it was founded in 2004. And you can see by these, if you look at these metrics, we're pretty big and we're pretty successful. We collect a lot of money, we have lots of members, we're a membership-based organization, and we have 120 people working for us. So all of these successful metrics that you see here are pretty much based on the fact that Wikipedia is one of the most visited websites in the world, and that combined with willingness of readers to contribute annually to our budget makes us this successful. So the chapters in recent years have been starting to realize that our projects are part of a larger knowledge ecosystem with multiple stakeholders. So it's not just about Wikipedia, but it's also about liberating knowledge in other arenas of the society. So education, culture, science, and we're working to free up knowledge with a whole bunch of institutional and community partners for all the access under open licenses. So those are sort of the developments of this thing we call movement. We're pretty successful, so what could go wrong? What could happen now? Well, not only has the Wikimedia movement grown in size and complexity, the world around us has changed dramatically since 2001, since Jimmy Wales started the Wikipedia in the proverbial garage. So demographic change is happening. The world is changing. Mobile devices have taken over. People use voice to request information from the internet, so they don't necessarily see Wikipedia anymore. Information and commerce are no longer confined by national borders. So some of the changes that are happening. Another thing that's occurring is that in recent years, access to high-quality factual information and knowledge, such as we see in Wikipedia, has become much desired to counterbalance sort of fake news and the social media bubbles and all those things that happen on the ad-based side of the internet. So Wikipedia has suddenly become the most trusted source of information. This is German, but this is the result of a survey done in Germany that said people actually trust Wikipedia more than they trust media or any other sources of knowledge. But we also face our own problems. First of all, we're not well known in the global south, so here you can see how many, what percentage of the population knows that open knowledge project called Wikipedia. And on the top, in the Western countries where Wikipedia is more established, we're losing the volunteer editors. So that's a fairly recent thing over the last few years, that our community base is actually shrinking, and that's a scary phenomenon. And we also have problems with diversity. So our community base is mostly older, white, male, well-educated, and so we're creating essentially what we call, how do you say, Herrschaftswissen? Yes, like patriarchal knowledge. So those are all of the things that happen in the world around us and with us. And then, of course, there's these guys, big tech. So the open internet that we all started out with a long time ago was based on the vision of free as in free beer and Libre as an open. And we started with these ideals like connection and non-discrimination, collaboration, equal access, open development, and decentralization, where nobody would have power or authority over everything. And this utopia, while our free knowledge communities still follow that and embrace it, on the larger internet has now all but been eaten by big tech. Their business model has turned your personal data into a commodity brokered for the purposes of electoral sabotage and corporate gain. And I just want to quote the CEO of the Wikimedia Foundation, who said recently in Berlin at the Republica conference, she said, like any commons, the internet is vulnerable to exploitation, commodification, and extraction. It represents a commons that has been conquered and carved up into virtual and capitalized digital kingdoms. So Wikipedia has been and is and always remain ad-free, unlike big tech. And yet we continue to be the 5th most visited website globally. Our digital commons is one of the few remaining stalwart systems against the ad-based internet, and so we know it works because we're doing it every day. So realizing that the political and economic environment is changing in ways that threaten free knowledge, the Foundation and us and some of the other larger chapters have evolved into strong civic organizations. We do advocacy, we join ranks with Mozilla and Creative Commons to defend the open internet. We're fighting for freedom of speech, net neutrality, against censorship, and for the right to access to knowledge. So we've become political actors. So we are growing up. We're becoming our own while we connect. Oh, this is a picture of Turkey, where Wikipedia is dark. We're becoming our own while we connect and while we identify our friends and our enemies and our position in the world, and the Wikimedias of the world are truly coming of age. But does that make us a movement yet? I think not. So to meet all these challenges and to become a truly global, diverse, and inclusive, radical, and impactful movement, we ourselves have to evolve. So coming of age ultimately it has to include self-reflection and improvement. And I say this because we know in the movement that too many of our structures and our resources, our technology, and our practices actually reflect privilege. The privileges of gender, race, education, age, wealth, and access to resources. So our culture has largely been shaped by educated people from Western countries and industrialized nations who are able to volunteer their time and who are able to raise charitable funds in their own country. And many of them are not aware that knowledge is a privilege. And in addition, the potential of these communities, like I said before, for social mobilization is limited because they are online individually engaged people. So just to make this a little more tangible, like your loner German Wikipedian might not be a good candidate to take to the streets and picket for net neutrality. He or she might not be up for mingling at social events. Some of these people really want to be left alone. They don't want to hang out with us. They might not be good for community organizing or writing letters to their legislators even. And we don't know to what extent a Western European FOSS developer, for example, working on Wikidata, feels solidarity for the Wikimedian active in the Ghana user group, struggling for access to knowledge, or the Wikipedian from Turkey seeing her project go dark. So what will make us a social movement? What will unite all these people that come from so many different backgrounds and so many different interests? Well, we were trying to figure that out, and so we started this long, intense, big participatory process, and it's called the movement strategy process. Of course, we have to call it process because we're all about process in our movement. And that was in 2017. And we arrived at what we call a strategic direction. Oh God, it's already over? Okay, give me like 3 more minutes. So the strategic direction is as follows. We will become the essential infrastructure of the ecosystem of free knowledge. And anyone who shares our vision will be able to join us. And I'm going to skip this. And there's basically 2 pillars of this idea of the strategic direction. One is knowledge as a service, so that we serve our users, that we provide the platform that serves open knowledge to the world. And number 2, knowledge equity. So the realization that not everyone starts from the same place, and we have to, as a social movement, have to bring in all those people that have been left out by power and privilege, and break down the barriers that prevent people from access knowledge. So that's what we came up with about 6 months ago. And like I said, coming of age has to include self-reflection and change. And so we're looking right now, what we're doing this year is really looking closely at the movement itself and how our own structures of power and privilege prevent us from achieving this, of getting on the road to this, towards this strategic direction. And so this year, this is actually just starting, we are forming working groups, and they look at all kinds of different issues and ask all kinds of different questions. And that brings me back to this symposium, where I hope we'll find some people who are also interested in answering some of the same questions. So questions on governance and power and leadership. How are we defining leadership? What are the power structures that we need to get rid of? How do we make money? Is it okay to take money from Google? Is it okay to take money from Wikipedians and then send it to Ghana? How do we allocate money? How do we distribute the money that we collect? And what will our grants programs look like, for example? Questions of partnerships. How do we become better partners, and who do we partner with? Questions on capacity building. How do we build the capacity of the different components of our movements so they can all be strong together to move towards our strategic direction. So you can see, I'm not going to read all this to you, but I'm happy to share this with you. Community health questions, and then also technology. That's a big one because there are technological barriers to accessing and knowledge. And so we need to review those. So these are all, like the topics that you see here are all, each of them has a working group, and each working group is going to work on these issues over the next 8 months. Diversity is the last one. So with that, I'm almost done. I just want to thank you for your attention, and I'm hoping that, there's one more thing, one more quote I want to give you from Catherine. She said, "Free knowledge is a radical act because it subverts power structures." And to which I would add that knowledge freely shared, not only in digital commons, but as the mission and the driver of a social movement, is the way that it becomes actually radical and political, and more so impactful, more importantly impactful. So in order to have this impact, we have to support our own power structures, and we need all the help we can get from scholars like you guys, from other practitioners, and so I'm hoping to make lots of good connections over the next few days. Thank you.
One round of questions for Nikki. Angelos, Jean-Pierre, and
Okay,
sure. Empezamos con Angelos y
No, my question is very short. Thank you very much for the presentation. Is like, have to reflect it on the fact that the community base has been reduced. I mean, I think that you referred to this thing that the people that contribute actually to Wikipedia is now smaller than before. This is what you said, no?
Yeah, this is true for the mature
I mean,
Wikipedias.
have you ever reflected on this? Have you ever studied, examined why this happened? Like, it's a matter of the thing that Wikipedia is more complete than before, so the need of new entries or of collaborators is like smaller, or is it something else?
Yeah. I'd like to answer these one by one because my brain can't hold more than one question. Sorry. Yes, we have reflected it. We have not scientifically studied it. There's a lot of theories about what's going on. And this is only affecting the more mature Wikipedia. So it affects like the English, the German, and the Italian Wikipedia, for example. On the other hand, a project like Wikidata, which is only 5 years old now, has generated almost more volunteer editors now than the English Wikipedia has. So we are able to still mobilize online digital engagement, and I think our main problem and this is my personal opinion, this is not based on any scientific study, but the reason why in the Wikipedias, some of the Wikipedias we're losing people is the current demographics of the editors, which, like I said, are older white males, and the sort of lack of inclusiveness or inclusivity in that community. So it's hard for women to get in, it's hard for younger people to get in, it's hard for maybe new topics to get into the knowledge, digital commons, into the knowledge base. So that's one theory, but yes, we need help in figuring out what the hell is going on there and how to get over it. Okay.
Thanks for your talk. I'd be interested to hear your definition of two concepts, truth and objectivity.
Truth and objectivity.
Yeah.
And as it relates to Wikipedia?
Yes, your definition of someone that is.
Yes, okay, yeah. For us in this form of digital knowledge commons, there is not an absolute truth. Because we don't claim to have all the facts correct all the time, because Wikipedia is a moving thing and it always changes and people edit it. It's always getting better. And our community rules of engagement make it better. But same as with Wikidata, there's no guarantee that it's the absolute truth. And the other one is objectivity. That's a good one. That's the one that's discussed obviously a lot in our communities. There's a lot of discussion online going on about neutrality and objectivity of encyclopedic articles. And that discussion will probably never end. But I think it's also a very good discussion to have in this day and age. So objectivity for a Wikipedia article means that you represent all points of view on a particular subject in an equal way.
So just a follow-up. My understanding is that the way to deal with these big issues is procedural. So you have procedures in place.
Yes. Yes. And the reason I'm sort of a little bit shaky on my answer here is that as a representative of a Wikimedia organization, we actually have nothing to do with that. It's completely community governed. So there's probably some researchers in here that know better what's going on there than I do, because when people call us and complain about the content of a Wikipedia article, we refer them to the community mechanisms for dealing with that. We don't, as an organization, we don't do that.
A question on this policy arena that you have been saying about this new law of the European Commission about, because this week it has in the newspapers this new European law about the copyright going to close Wikipedia. That's like some journals say that this week, and then how are you going to deal with that, with this new law, or which mechanisms are you going to implement, or are you thinking on that?
Yeah, we're actually very actively lobbying against some parts of what she's referring to is the EU directive on copyright. And there's a few articles in there, Article 11 and Article 13, if you want to look it up, that will make it a lot more difficult for open knowledge projects to share knowledge on the internet. And I don't want to go, it's really nerdy stuff. I don't want to go into the details of it, but one is called upload filter, the other one is called, I can't think of the word right now, in English. But that EU directive went through the Judicial Committee of the European Commission today. Actually, it was earlier today, it was approved, so it was a big policy loss for us. So we're continuing to lobby. There's another year of process in the different instances that has to go through at the European Union. And we hope we can still defeat it. But for us, it's very important that we're able to mobilize our communities around that. And it's very important that we work together, and we do this already with other like-minded defenders of the open internet. So we're trying our best, but so far we haven't been very successful. But because basically the interests that are being represented in that legislation are those of large producers, commercial producers of knowledge.
Thank you, Nikki, again. Now I want to present Concha Salguero Herrera. She's a lawyer and she works on environmental and agrarian policy in the Asociación Transhumancia y Naturaleza, which is part of Iniciativas Comunales. She will talk about these initiatives. And through this, she has become more in contact with the passionate world of communal systems. She's also a member of the ICTA consortium, which is an international association that in Spain is coordinated by Sergio Cuoto. She's also a vocal of Iniciativas Comunales and her current interim secretary. So thank you, Concha, very much.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up because I'll try to make it very short because I'm the last one, so you're probably ready to go home or have dinner up here. And also because I'm getting frozen with this air conditioning a bit excessive. Well, as he said, I'm here representing Iniciativa Comunales, which is an association of what is called natural common systems, which is traditional common systems governing some areas of in this case, Spain. But traditional common systems have been very traditional all over the world. In Western countries have survived worse. So after the Industrial Revolution, kind of, that's lost social value. But still, we are discovering that this is still a lot surviving, especially in Spain, actually. So I'm going very quickly through Iniciativa Comunales, but basically it's a group of associations, common systems, all over Spain. So in Spain, we don't have accurate data, but we think that is still the European country where more common systems survived and are still working. We have a lot of common woodlands, but also in the rest of the European Union there is still some common systems, all different, by the way, in 18 European countries. So, for example, there's a lot of common woodlands in Sweden. I think it's the country that have more after Spain, probably. Also, in Iniciativa Comunales, we work on common grazings. We have a lot of pastos comunales that probably sounds familiar to you. So not every, but most of the municipalities still in Spain have pastos comunales. And traditionally, the pastos comunales, the common grazing, were used by extensive grazing and by transhumant shepherd with the sheep and other animals. So that is still a very important resource for common grazing and transhumant system, which is where I work. Part of my work is to support that systems, not really because of the farming use of it, which also we support, but because it's a very efficient system in the conservation and keeping of valuable ecosystems all over the world. So we are really supporting extensive grazing and transhumance because they create ecosystems that they couldn't survive without that human practice. Actually, the other one is a very interesting case. It's a common area. It's the grazing one between 3 provinces. It's the part of I think it's Vitoria, Burgos, and another province. I can't remember now, but it's that sort of it's a common governed by 3 provinces together, which is very unusual system. This one also part of the Iniciativa Comunales are irrigation and water system. The irrigation systems, traditional irrigation systems, are still surviving. This is Sierra Nevada in Granada. And these channels through the mountains were very, very important for the irrigation of the whole little orchards and also the pastures in Sierra Nevada. But the most interesting case is also the system they have, which is absolutely clever, to recharge water sources underneath, down the slope of the mountains, to have mountains in the water in the summer. And that would be still very useful if we are able to maintain that traditional irrigation systems. And actually some people in the University of Granada are reviving part of these channels with the irrigation communities of the area. And it's really also is very satisfying, because when you open one of these channels and you see the water running, coming down the channel, it's like a very boosting activity for the community. Also from the environmental point of view, these channels create a sort of ampliation of the river effect. So part of these channels has been under the modernization of irrigation systems promoted by the European Union, and you see they put some cement around the channels and nothing is going around. So the beneficial of the systems is having the channels as traditional, started with the Arab, so 1,000 years ago, which is an amazing system, is still very valuable if we, work for maintaining them. In Iniciativa Comunales there are also more modern systems. This is, for example, common Marie Skłodowska-Curie system. Okay, I said Marie Skłodowska-Curie because I was discussing with my partner who is British. We could be the first word and we couldn't get one. So Marie Skłodowska-Curie, so the seafood, well, the shelling, collecting shells in the beach, wherever. In Galicia, for example, this is Cambados. That's a colony that was started in the 70s, basically made by women. And nowadays it's a very, one of the principal activities for the women common communities in this area, the part of Spain, and they're part of Iniciativa Comunales, also some of them. And this is another common system, which is the Drovers Road. In Spanish would be Las Cañadas Reales, ¿no? Alguien le sonará, probably sounds familiar, o el sistema de vías pecuarias y cañadas reales. There's also part of the system is here in Catalonia, and some people are trying to use it as with other uses also. Why is important? Because apart from this is a unique case in the world, having 125,000 kilometers of Drovers Road officially recognized from 17th century, and we have a new law in 1995 who confirmed that those roads are official. On top of that, that law recognizes also complementary uses to the farming use, which is important because I calculated that it's like having 160 Caminos de Santiago that can really create new rural development and activities and new, projections of sustainable business, little businesses for people around all these activities in Drovers Road. That can be one really source to revitalize rural areas with really sustainable jobs. But on top of that, the Drovers Road, the vías pecuarias, are recognized as very important ecological corridors. We are actually producing a map. I couldn't bring it here, but we're producing a map to overlap the Drovers Road map in the Iberian Peninsula with the all protected areas in Spain. And basically, it's like you see that the Drovers Road are like the veins providing life to all the protected areas. And that is not a casualty. It's because all the animals are able to transport seeds and disseminate seeds all over the place, which is vital for climate change, for example. And also because they also, the most useful is the droppings from the animals that disseminate the seeds but already germinated, which is increasing the probability of success of the seeds. So for a country as Spain, with a very high risk of climate change severe effects, it's vital to keep that kind of systems. As as I said, these shared or common systems are very traditional in the whole Europe. That was actually the normal system, not the private one, but the communal ones. But of course, after the Industrial Revolution, the values, the social values, started to be different, so they became not useful for society. But today there is, I think, there is a kind of revival, we consider. I said this is a reaction against cosmo-capitalism, or whatever we want to call it, but this kind of, the moment of we are living about capitalism, wherever the stage is, but for sure it's very global. So I think also because there is a huge pressure on natural resources, there is a sort of reaction to protect something vital for us, which is the natural resources. So the soil to produce food, and the water to drink and produce food also. So because we have less and less and more polluted and contaminated, I think the reaction is natural, like the communities defending themselves for survival. So for me, this is the interpretation why the common systems are reviving somehow. Also because we all are witnessing that the unbalanced world we are creating, like more polarized between the people who really possess a lot and the majority of people who is possessing less and less. So that very unbalanced situation put a lot of pressure on those resources. So that's another kind for reviving the commons, because they can be useful for the new situation. What are the challenges we are confronting in Iniciativa Comunales and in general when we want to revive the commons? First of all, well, that neoliberalism and capitalism are really accelerating the privatization and appropriation of natural resources to produce industrial agriculture massively. Also, there is a big disconnection between people and nature in general. So people are living more and more in urban areas, disconnected from nature. And when you are not really connected with nature and you don't know nature, you don't value nature. So that's one of the problems we have all over the world. The second is there is a disconnection between urban and rural areas, and the understanding between them is getting really jeopardized and complex. Of course, rural areas, the population is a huge problem, especially in Spain. Some areas, if you have no people, it's waste of energy to start any sort of project or ideas. And the population we have is very old and getting really aging. The capitalism culture embedded us all, really. And individual choices cannot see what are our impacts in the whole community for us and natural resource. So all the capitalist culture make us making individual choices instead of thinking of the community or what effect of my choice in the community. And then we have lots of traditional ecological knowledge that is basic and massive. So all the knowledge we have built through thousands of years has been lost in the last 40 years. And we're losing that knowledge every day. So in 10 years probably all the old people who still have some ecological knowledge will be dead. And we have lost all the human construction we built through centuries. And well, it's a massive biodiversity degradation, which is another big factor in rural areas, but also for urban people. And some examples: industrial farming versus pastoral system. That's an example I want to write. Now there is a rise of veganism, especially in urban areas. So for us who are defending these systems because of the good effect for conservation and some of the more valuable ecosystems depend on pastoralism, it's quite difficult to make people understand that that system is different for the other system. And all the good effect of the first system are sort of hidden by the fact that farming is really bad for environment. Of course, that farming is really bad for environment and for ethics, just keeping the animals like that. But the other one, even if you are vegetarian, perhaps you have reason to sustain it. Okay. And now another thing is how to transmit some policies that are really damaging for that natural resources, like the common agriculture policy, who absorb 40% of the whole European budget, which is money from all of us, spending in a policy that is really degrading our natural resources. So now it's being discussed in the European level, the new deal for the next 6 years. I'm going to Brussels next week because we're trying to lobby for these systems, because they, in the new Commission proposal, the high nature value systems, which are all these agricultural good systems for the environment and for people and for producing good food, have been deleted from the proposal, which is really bad news for all of us. Solutions, well, I can see some ideas. Reconnection with nature and with rural and urban areas, because we depend on each other. Making alliances at civil level between all different groups interested in eating well, having good food, and having a good well-being, and surviving all these pressures. And to defend common goods with common objectives and common governance objectives, which is the common good we have to really regain to work for the common good and not for rentability, which is something that in the political area they always argue with rentability and profitability instead of the common good. We have to recover that concept. And finally, I think individualism against common good, we have to think about that, because in the end, when we enter to these discussions, we always get to that question of ethics, values, and spiritual values. We have to really regain that the private and the common policy have to really work for the common good. And that means a change in the values from all us, I think. So that's all. Thank you.
Questions for Lucia?
Too hungry.
Yeah, I have a question. You said that Spain has a large percentage of areas that are in common. How come it survived so much in terms of how the government, what's the role of the government?
Well, there's a lot of different elements. The funny thing is that Spain is also the country more biodiverse in Europe. And actually, if you heard of Natura 2000, Natura 2000, which is the biggest protected areas in the world by the European Union, is the country that has a bigger number. So it's 500 places compared with the next one, which is France. Perhaps there is a coincidence, but I don't think there is a coincidence. It's because that sort of human trying to survive with nature produce very clever systems to being able to produce very special ecosystems, combining surviving with a very long view of sustaining the nature which you depend on. So I think there is a coincidence of both circumstances, but also because probably Spain is a very diverse country in Europe geographically. So we have Atlantic climate, mountains, valleys, so which means we have diversity, and through the centuries we had to survive to the diversity, because sometimes it's really hard to survive temperatures and climate circumstances. And I think the combination of all that make people feel very skillful dealing with the environment. And the only thing is to get an agreement in common to survive together. So that's my interpretation, because there is no, as far as I know, there is no academic research on that. But I think that can be one of the explanations why. So of course, when humans use the brain in the positive way, we can make wonders.
Yeah, hi, it's fantastic. So, in the introduction, you're introduced as a lawyer. What are the legal principles you can argue for to protect this?
Well, basically nowadays what we are using is the protection of nature, but also creating economic network in rural areas. For example, we work a lot with common agriculture policy, but also with habitats and directive at European level. And we argue that these systems can comply with several of the obligations related to that regulation. So if we need to comply with them, we really need to support systems that are beneficial for this system we are trying to protect. And also because, for example, it's a very cost-effective way to comply with those obligations. And in the case of protected areas, for example, if you really support some traditional activities like grazing, you can prevent fires, for example, instead of have to spend a lot of money on helicopters and all that equipment. So I think that from the cost-effective point of view, and from the conservation point of view, and from the social point of view, we really must to support these systems.
We have a question here in the front.
Yes, thank you very much. I was concerned about what do you say on we are losing the knowledge of ecological skills because people is very old. And do you plan some action, doing interviews to these people? Do you have supporters? And also regarding all the actions and knowledge of these commons, if do you plan to make public campaigns for informing people, because again media do not talk about these issues.
Yes, we are a small NGO. Actually, we are 8 people. But what we do is we have several projects with the bigger organizations. But for example, about the CAP campaign, the Common Agriculture Policy campaign, we have joined something called Living Land, which I encourage you to go to the website and have a look. Living Land. And Living Land is trying to make a big alliance at European level to put pressure on the European Commission to say we want this kind of agriculture. Actually, we campaign with other partners, and 250,000 people send messages to the European Commission saying we want a fairer common agriculture policy, a healthier food for us, etc. So the only way is to really make alliances of different groups, consumers, civil society, urban groups in urban areas, rural people, to really push for the same things, the very basic things like having healthy food in healthy ecosystems. I think that's the idea we should go for. And regarding the traditional ecological knowledge, which is really serious, I think, is something, it's like losing an Amazonia every month. At the moment, we are, for example, interviewing all the old shepherds, transhuman shepherds we could find. So there is young people interviewing this, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, the kind of information they have. It's really emotional and very, very interesting. And there is also a very good effect for them, because suddenly they feel really valued. And they are so surprised, and they are so keen to tell you everything about the knowledge they have, they don't know they have. And it's so, I think, well, at least I feel satisfied we are collecting all that information before they go. And most of them are 80-something. And we see, one of the questions is, what kind of change you're seeing, you're witnessing all this year? And it's like, they can't believe the change. I mean, for example, the fauna and the flora and the fauna, they say always, there is nothing now. You cannot hear the birds, and there is no insect, there is no flowers, there's nothing. And of course, compared with the time they were, in the countryside, you see the dramatic loss we have in our biodiversity system. So we're making our best, but
Thank you again.